What was meant to be a celebratory milestone capping an inspirational decade showcasing wounded veterans' perseverance through athletic competition devolved into abject humiliation this week in Colorado Springs. As Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, emerged to lead the traditional parade of nations commencing the 10th anniversary Invictus Games, a roar of boos and jeers reverberated across the entire ceremony's footprint. The shocking display of open resentment toward Prince Harry's wife came not from outside protesters or casual spectators, but from hundreds of disgruntled military participants themselves. By most estimates, over 800 athletes and former armed services members turned out to voice deafening condemnations upon the Duchess making her first public appearance in the game's lead role as de facto patron. Many observers described the sustained heckling as unlike anything ever witnessed in the typically uplifting competition's history. What began as a smattering of aggressive murmuring gradually coalesced into a unified chorus of relentless derision, drowning out even Meghan's attempt at delivering ceremonial remarks through the PA system for a viewing audience of millions worldwide. We're not talking about just some social media dogpiling instigated by random internet trolls carrying stale grudges over cheap tabloid rumblings, recounted British Army veteran and veteran Invictus ambassador Al Hughes, who watched the scene unfold in dismay. This was immediate, visceral, straight from the soul rejection emanating from the wounded warriors who should absolutely represent this event's heart and soul above all. To watch countless individuals who quite literally survived the ravages of war taking such a brazenly dismissive stand, it was utterly demoralizing in a way I'm struggling to find the words to properly describe. Indeed, as footage from the internationally streamed spectacle's opening ceremonies confirms, the coordinated mass of raspberries, catcalls and outright bellowed obscenities hurled in Meghan's direction created an inescapable atmosphere of scorn virtually unheard of for this worldwide Paralympic series. The cascading invective persisted for well over 20 minutes, even as her princed husband could be seen pleading with the rowdy crowd to pipe down from the ceremonial dais where the couple had hoped to deliver a fresh slate of soaring rhetoric around resilience and second acts. Instead, the pre-recorded video feed cut away to backup coverage without the Duchess ever getting a chance to share her intended remarks, the absolute nadir in what's becoming an escalating pattern of shunning and outright boycotts from the very people she and Harry had once championed above all. What an absolute disgrace to see the unhinged mobs turn this year's games into a total farce before they could even properly commence, harumphed Brian Willoughby, Executive Director of the Royal British Legion's American Operations. These are competitions meant to honor people who sacrificed their very minds and bodies in defense of democracies now being disgraced by a bunch of rootless malcontents using a storied tradition as their own arson-tagged soapbox. While the raucous crowd's motivations remain open to speculation, few could claim complete surprise that Meghan ended up on the receiving end after accumulating so much negative perception baggage in recent years. Over the past 8 months in particular, the Duchess has experienced a precipitous collapse of popularity even among supporters who'd once practically deified her sleek progressive bona fides and reputation as an unimpeachably moral voice. Accusations of breathtaking griftercraft and galling narcissism from a slew of former confidants both within Hollywood and across the UK's media spheres, reinforced by multiple televised takedowns alleging two-faced backstabbing, ultimately metastasized into widespread public revilement. The Invictus Games themselves, in fact, represented one of the few bastions of institutional credibility Meghan maintained up until this devastating parade immolation. Wounded British veterans who participated in those inaugural seasons of athletic renaissance frequently described her steadying presence and hands-on support for their recovery regimens as nothing short of heroic. Many athletes attributed successful rehabilitations toward reclaiming fulfilling lives after battlefield traumas solely to the Duchess's committed advocacy and patronage. In the immediate aftermath of her bitter royal resignation, championing the sporting chances for disabled veterans remained her most sacrosanct calling card in the face of near-universal backlash. The old vanguard knew there was no higher soapbox than Invictus if you wanted to spread the true gospel of what Harry's missus did behind the curtain when no PR-spun spotlight shone, said Fergus Bentley, a founding Paralympian member gearing up for his 6th Games appearance. Come our first trials back in 2016, she practically embedded as an honorary medic treating every last one of us like. Here are some key details about the Invictus Games and Meghan Markle's involvement with them. The Invictus Games is an international multisport event created by Prince Harry in 2014, in which wounded, injured or sick armed services personnel and veterans compete in sports like wheelchair basketball, sitting volleyball, and indoor rowing. The name Invictus comes from the Latin word meaning unconquered or undefeated, embodying the resilience and unconquered spirit of the competitors. The Invictus Games were inspired by Harry's witnessing the Warrior Games in the U.S., which featured injured American service members and veterans. He wanted to create an expanded international version open to allies and friends. The inaugural Invictus Games took place in London in 2014, with subsequent editions held in Orlando, 2016, Toronto, 2017, Sydney, 2018, and The Hague, 2022. The 2020 Games were postponed due to COVID-19. From the outset, Meghan Markle embraced the Invictus Games as a major part of her and Harry's charitable efforts and advocacy for wounded veterans. Meghan attended her first Invictus Games in Toronto in 2017, making her public debut with Harry as a couple there. She actively participated by attending events and handshaking with competitors. After marrying Harry in 2018, Meghan continued passionately supporting and promoting the Invictus Games ethos of empowering and celebrating wounded veterans. She attended the 2018 Sydney Invictus Games while pregnant and has narrated promotional videos highlighting the stories of competitors. The 2023 Invictus Games in Dusseldorf would mark the 10th anniversary edition and the first since Harry and Meghan stepped back from royal duties in 2020.